there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
The Macedonian Academy of Science and Arts, MANU, under President Lupsho Kosarev, tells the Zoran Zaev government that MANU will not be changing its name as Zaev foolishly and wrongly demands. At the same time, Kosarev has publicly stated that recent agreements between Macedonia, which it has concluded with Greece and Bulgaria, should be analyzed and closely examined, noting the inherent contradictions in them. And over the past year and a half, MANU has been standing up for the Macedonian language, Macedonian history, and more. No surprise then that Zoran Zaev is now publicly demanding that MANU changes its name, stating, quote, "A very nice solution has been found in talks and an agreement with Greece, and I believe that a solution will be found for this matter as well," unquote. What a silly little man. Meanwhile, we have recent sentencing of Sasho Mijalkov, the vaccines, as Zaev calls them, the upcoming census, and of course the continuous statements of various Bulgarian officials, like Defense Minister Krste Misirkov, telling Macedonians they must admit that Macedonians are Bulgarians. Granted, it's always better listening to Karakachanov in the original German when he starts spouting off. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin from Skopje, Macedonia.
How you doing, Sven?
A bit tired, but doing fine. Weather is turning to the better here. That blast of winter we had is over.
Yeah, it's March 2nd. We're recording this on Tuesday, March 2nd, so we're finally in the month of March. This is episode 104 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. It'll be, I hate to tell you, it'll be like 28 here tomorrow in southern Arizona, so and the rest of the week also. So,
hopefully we catch up soon enough.
Oh, you will. Yeah, you will. But then we'll outdo you on the temperature wars. So,
No.
All right. Well, here we go into March. Last week when we recorded episode 103, we had the big brouhaha and the drama and everything else with Sasho Mijalkov fleeing, quote unquote, fleeing the country. I still don't know if he actually did or not. I don't know if anybody knows. I don't know if he knows. But bottom line was he turned himself in. And then on Friday, he was sentenced to what, 12 years?
12 years, almost
which, as we were talking offline, that's a pretty big sentencing for him, correct?
Yeah, the maximum that was requested was 13, and he got almost the maximum, very likely because he fled either the country or at the very least tried to avoid house arrest. So this definitely influenced the sentencing, but also the public outrage, because it was pretty clear that Zaev is operating on a deal, has an arrangement with Mijalkov that, here we go again, another top person fleeing Gruevski's cousin. And it was really too much for, Zaev to survive politically. It's very likely that the internationals, the theory is that the internationals pressured Mijalkov to return, threatened him to return, and also demanded that Zaev stops, at least publicly, displaying this cooperation, political and business cooperation he has with Mijalkov. So the sentencing was almost maximum, and he now has 60 days of detention. So he was actually sent to prison right after the sentencing. He was not sent to prison even after he fled. He was still given house arrest for a few more days. So that was a shocking turn of events. Now he's in the Shutka detention prison.
Oh yeah. So in a cell by himself due to COVID protocols, etc. Is he going to appeal? Can he appeal?
Oh, of course, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm sure he'll appeal, and so what you're saying is this saga will simply continue. This soap opera will continue.
Well, it depends how useful he continues to be for Zaev. If he can deliver on splintering Vimera, then he might get more leniency. He might escape, have the detention not renewed after 60 days or even cut short sooner. But he really failed to gain any traction with breaking up the party. He only had like a few dozen people show up for an event he was organizing the day before he fled the country. While at the same day, Vimera began collecting signatures to block the census law, and they easily collected 30,000 on the first day, 30,000 on the second day, over 100,000 by now in several pushes. So, he really got zero traction here. So he's not very useful for Zaev. And he already did the deed in the sense of providing the votes to rename the country. So, he was very useful for Zaev and the internationals in 2019, but he hasn't done anything for them lately. So he might be flushed down the drain, which is, most worrying for Zaev himself, because Zaev is looking at this person who, turned his back on Vimera, stabbed it in the back, and then helped the internationals. And he sees how he's being flushed down the toilet, and Zaev can't help but, remember that the same fate may await him pretty soon, because he will outlive his usefulness if he hasn't already.
Oh, of course, and we've said this many times and written about it that it's essentially an extension of the revolution always devours its own, and so in a way maybe it's a corollary to that as you said, they outlive their usefulness and they're flushed down the toilet. Since this is an English language podcast, a lot of our listeners are familiar with what goes on in the United States. So if I may dare say, this is a little like flushing Andrew Cuomo down the toilet.
Yeah.
He's outlived his usefulness to the Democrat Party, and so it's time for him to go. All right. Well, that's interesting. We'll keep following that and what goes on. You mentioned the census, and we mentioned that in the monologue here. So that's supposed to begin April, correct? And they're in preparation phase now for it. But
yeah, the online registration for the internationals already began. So the way it works, I think even you can do it. I mean, people are complaining that
oh dear,
it's not very it's not very protected. So there's a lot of videos online about people who use VPN to register as if they're from abroad. It's going to be a big cluster, and no security, no fingerprinting. Anybody can register for anybody else. At this point, the way it looks, the census chief guy just keeps threatening everybody with prison if they don't obey. And mainly, this is the way it is because the Albanians insisted that they get, the whole diaspora registered citizens who are not residents of Macedonia to be listed in the census, and the census is supposed to be for residents, not for citizens. So, but the Albanians fear they'll drop below 20%, and we'll have a wildly inaccurate, completely, bogus census in the end.
I don't think we're ever going to know what the accurate number of citizens in the Republic of Macedonia is. I mean, it's been 2002, so going on 20 years since the last census, and even that one had issues. I don't know what the solution is. Although as one of our favorite people that we like to quote, the economist Tom Sewell, says there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So. Well, we'll follow that as well. We are not suggesting, as the Macedonian content farmers, that you should register early and often for the census, no matter where you are. But I'm sure some people will do that. But we're not suggesting that. Just want to make that clear. Right. And I skipped over the vaccines. Are you guys? You get your jab yet?
Oh, it's getting even worse now. If you can, if it could get worse. So we only have the 8,000 from the Serbs. They gave it in 2 installments, donation of 8,000 Pfizer vaccines. But by the end of February, there was supposed to be a contract with the Chinese coming through. They started negotiating. Zaev started negotiating this in early February, and a bunch of times he said, "Well, listen, it's the Chinese New Year, so." They're now busy celebrating, but once it's done, they will definitely send us the the vaccines by the end of February. And this was repeated a bunch of times
Which
by
year?
Zaev and Filipcha. Yeah, exactly. And as you can see now, it's March and no vaccines. And even at one point over the weekend, Vimera came out with a leak from the healthcare minister. They said, listen, something horrible happened with the Chinese guys. They actually paid back the advance. So we paid some pretty significant advance for the 200,000 vaccines that were supposed to arrive. And they gave us the money back. Yeah.
The Chinese returned the check?
AliExpress returned your order. Your credit card denied. The Nigerian prince says, no, sorry, you're too sketchy, I can't. Or there was another joke that the Chinese asked, okay, well, what do we put you down under? Well, the former Yugoslav, no, wait, the firearm, no, the North, okay, never mind, just drop it. We're not buying anything. So Vimera says they gave us the money back and they say there is a problem. And now we realize there actually is a problem. The vaccines are not coming. The numbers are actually getting worse. We got down to about 6,000 active cases. Now we are up to 8,500. The fatalities are increasing because I guess this British strain is more deadly and more contagious. Several cities like Kavadarci has a huge spike, and people believe it's because they caught the British strain. And
now you're being
absolutely...
you're being bigoted. You can't use we can't call it the Chinese virus. You can't call it the British strain.
No, I think they used the British strain even in the U.S. Well, they told you can't use the Wuhan red flu, but red death. But you could use the English. There was an early British or what was it called, the European strain or something like that. I think this is the second British strain they've been using, and it was a lot from the start. And now even Shekerinska came out and she had a horrific statement. So Vimera leaked the information that the money have been returned, but Shekerinska goes out and she's always manages to step into it, to say the stupidest thing imaginable. So now she says, well, we have a transparent government, and if we wanted to, we could have hidden the fact from you that they gave us the money back, but no, we confirmed it, and we told you that there is a problem, and we're not hiding the problems. And everybody's like, oh, come on, just shut up already. Before, her previous statement was that, well, we could have ordered all the vaccines like Serbia in time from all the suppliers, and we would have come out like Serbia, the most competent and ready government, but you would have been suspicious, and we didn't. You would have refused to take the vaccines because, it would look like that we're too ready and they're coming too soon. So that's why we didn't order them all at once immediately, early in the stages of the development, and that's why we're now late.
That's a definition of too clever by half. So, wow, interesting. Okay, well, I think we're up to 25 million fully vaccinated here in the United States, which is almost 10%, getting there. So I think we're hitting our stride, especially now with the J&J, the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine starting today. So it'll happen. You'll get it eventually. I mean, the vaccines. So that's what I mean. You'll get eventually the vaccines, especially, and of course, and I'm always looking at the news to see if the airlines and the governments are going to conspire to institute a vaccine passport, meaning that you have to have it to fly. Because I'm happy. I'll wait until it's my turn, unless that happens. In which case, I like to get over to Macedonia and other places, and so we'll see.
And I would like to get to Arizona sometime.
Absolutely, you are always welcome here, just like Christmas itself. So.
Well, I'll first have to check that with the embassy here, with the visa department.
True. Oh yes. Yeah, well, theoretically they're separated. Like theoretically in major media, there's supposed to be a wall of separation between editorial and advertising, but we know that doesn't exist either. So.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, all right.
But the embassy donated us a bunch of rifles. Did you see that? And gave them to Shekerinska. And everybody was like, okay, is this effective against COVID? can we shoot the virus now? I mean, we were asking for vaccines, not for like 2,000 used M4s.
Kalashnikovs? Oh, no. Sorry, M16s?
M4s, I think.
Okay.
It is still a machine gun, right? M16,
Yeah.
but what, the M4 is the newer version or the older?
I don't know. I
Not
don't.
sure.
I have to ask some of my
Yeah.
more gun-loving friends. So, well, that's nice. So, well, NATO is standing shoulder to shoulder with you then. If you know, can't help you on the vaccine effort, but we can give you guns to fight against. Well, maybe the Bulgarians. That's a nice segue. Since next door NATO member Bulgaria is constantly threatening Macedonia, it seems like on a daily basis. There's always some Bulgarian official, whether it's Zaharieva, the foreign minister, or Karakachanov, the defense minister, demanding that Macedonia, Macedonians change their identity. As I said, it's always better listening to them the original German. Maybe we can insert a nice little German clip there.
If you want to solidify the veto from Bulgaria,
Let's do it. Yeah. Well, this is a public service, in my opinion, Cvetin, I think, because we all know that the EU is not going to last much longer. It's going to change one way or another. So by, solidifying the Bulgarian veto of Macedonia's entrance into the European Union, we're merely performing a public service and helping Macedonia to stave off that pain of joining a failing organization and actually, helping Macedonia to learn a little bit more about responsibility and self-reliance and figuring out that there are other ways to get rich other than being in the EU, which will take forever if it even happens. But I forgot what the latest statement was. I saw it earlier this morning. It's still morning my time. From the Bulgarian president, I think, was demanding that ethnic Bulgarians, I'm using scare quotes here, in Macedonia be allowed to express their identity, and nobody's denying them that. I mean, my goodness, if there's one country in southeastern Europe where people can freely express their identity, it's Macedonia.
Yeah, that's true.
Greece is the country that I think constitutionally says it has only Greeks and won't allow anybody to register as anything else or be recognized as anything else. But my goodness.
Bulgaria also won't allow the Turks, for example, to have a party of Turks. They insist that it's like the movement of rights and liberties. They can say the Turkish party in Bulgaria.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's little things like that, which are really actually bigger things that point to the absolute and total utter hypocrisy of the European Union. When these EU countries can get away with that, and which, for an institution like the EU, and we've seen their rollout with the vaccines, which has been horrific and caused all kinds of problems. But when they claim to have values and they allow member countries to get away with that, well, they don't. Of course, it's this constant talk about having values when what individuals and countries should have as virtues. But that's a whole other subject for another time. So, anyway, we got in our contractually obligated a few words there about Bulgaria for this podcast.
The thing is, they have now security. They have their intelligence services sent on Zaev. They set up a association of Bulgarians in Bitola. But this was apparently set up by the left in Bulgaria. So they appealed for help to the state and to the president. And the president, who is a socialist, Rumen Radev. And they have elections, so they need to outdo each other in protecting Bulgarians in Macedonia, the left and the right in Bulgaria. So they had, so the president said, I have, some authority over the intelligence services, and I'm ordering them to get involved in this case because Bulgarians in Macedonia complain that their rights are violated. So this is obviously pre-election pandering, but still, Pendarovsky today responded like, this is interference in our internal affairs because, we have the president of a neighboring country say that he's using his intelligence service to influence us, which is very rich coming from Pendarovsky, who was brought to power by foreign intelligence services and is held in power by foreign intelligence services. But this is where we are at this moment.
Wow. So you got one NATO member interfering in the domestic affairs of another NATO member with their intelligence services. Bravo, NATO! What a way to stand shoulder to shoulder.
And they had Lyubcho Georgievsky activated again. So we have two former prime ministers now helping Bulgaria out. One of them, Georgievsky, is an out and about pro-Bulgarian politician. He got a Bulgarian passport when he was facing arrest and persecution in similar fashion that Vimmer is being persecuted now. He was being persecuted in 2002 after the essentially forceful change of power in 2002. And he got protection from Bulgaria, so he's now doing their bidding. And he came out with a set of proposals, essentially accepting all of their demands, even upping some of their ideas or trying to find a common ground, which is, 9/10 of the way approaching the Bulgarian position. So he came out with a list of proposals, and Buchkovsky, the other former prime minister, sentenced for corruption and never actually serving any prison time. He's now Zaev's envoy to Bulgaria, and he says, okay, listen to Georgievsky, these are good proposals. So these two are practically now, moving the ball forward. But in reality, this is Zaev doing it because both are, Zaev's envoy and Zaev's coalition partner is Georgievsky. So something is afoot, but I'm not sure. I mean, I expected they'll need to do this before the elections in Bulgaria so that the right in Bulgaria can brag about this in the election. But obviously, as we said, both sides in Bulgaria are picking are trying to use the issue for their, and they're both sides are probably making some kind of offer to Zaev. So we'll see. I mean, if there is no deal, it could be to the benefit of the socialists in Bulgaria.
Right. So you've got the two former prime ministers, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, to use a cultural reference, an obscure one, trying to be more Bulgarian than the Bulgarians, it seems like, at least with Georgievsky. So, all right, well, there's so much there but we actually have to limit ourselves as to how much we talk about this on these podcasts because we could do this every day. But let's talk MANU, because I think at the end of the episode 103 last week, we talked a little bit about it. We said we were going to talk about it this time, and the whole use of the adjective Macedonian. So as I started off with a monologue there, the Macedonian Academy of Science and Arts, which is MANU, the Zaev government, through the parliament, through the so-called speaker, Tala Jaferi, had told MANU and the president, Lyubcho Kosarev, that it had to change its name to something with the N word in it. And he said no. And so Parliament withdrew its demands or its bill. I'm not sure exactly what it was. What was it?
It was a draft bill.
Okay, a draft bill to change the name of MANU.
Yep.
So they withdrew that. Seems like a victory. Shows that you can stand up to the bully in this case being Zoran Zaev and his government. And then Zaev comes out, I think it was yesterday, and said that no, it's the law. MANU must change its name. And the quote that I found there said, "A very nice solution has been found in talks and an agreement with Greece, and I believe that a solution will be found for this matter as well." Silly, foolish little man. Again, Prespid be damned, because it was wrongly implemented in Macedonia against the will of the people. But if you read it, there's nothing wrong with using the adjective Macedonian. And now we have the Ministry of Justice denying private entities, businesses, NGOs, civil society, neighborhood associations, whatever, that want to use the term the word proper noun Macedonia in their name. The Justice Ministry is saying no, you can't. But even a cursory reading of Prespa says yes, you can. Macedonian Academy of Science and Arts. How's this going to end?
I mean, if you look at Prespa, it says that institutions need to use the adjective North, need to add North to their names. Private entities should be allowed to use Macedonian, but This was not very clear if they have some funding or some relationship to the state, which all of them do. I mean, obviously the ministry is taking now the most draconian approach, the most pro-Greek approach at the moment. By any, reading of the treaty, MANU should change the name. Zaev called on a bunch of institutions to do so. So, for example, the Opera and Ballet did this. The Philharmonic Orchestra does it, but kind of like not very enthusiastically. So it depends on who is in charge. The Macedonian television said no. Zaev keeps calling it the national television. They refuse. MIA, the state news agency, changed its name into the Media Information Agency. So just to keep its
nice
abbreviation. Yeah. And MANU just outright refuses, even under the previous management. So it was led by Vlado Kambovski, who is a communist era, police, intelligence, security apparatchik. So absolutely, the first to throw in the towel and to, denounce Macedonia and Macedonian patriotism. He was actually arresting Macedonian patriots in the past. Then it was led by Taki Fiti after Prespa, who is a Vlah and also a lefty, a communist. So on both ends, he's not very involved in the Macedonian cause. But now the latest, the new president of the academies, Ljubcho Kocarev, IT specialist, little known before, not very politically active, and he came out swinging. He's out and about protecting Macedonian identity, denouncing the government, very outspoken, and he was practically behind this initiative to tell the parliament to take their law and stuff it. And it's a very good, very interesting, very notable change of tactic. Before, it became almost like a running joke. Like people would say, "Did MANU respond to this latest travesty?" And everybody's like, "Ha, of course they wouldn't." But now they're actually responding. They're actually reacting to the point that the left organized an attack on Kocarev recently. So he also said that there was a report that just as the left is the Zaev government is trying to abolish the history as a standalone class in elementary schools to placate, our neighbors, etc. They are now pushing to abolish the Macedonian language studies at the philological faculty in Skopje and the Macedonian literature studies. And they want to roll them into like South Slavic literature or broadly literature or linguistics for the language. And this was leaked, but the document was not leaked. And Kocarev denounced this very strongly. But now the people from the faculty who said this happened, who said we have the documents, they're not publishing them. So Kocarev was caught, in between. He made the claim, he joined in the claims, but now he can't back it up. So he kind of not apologized, but said like, okay, it's good if we stop this with our public, reaction. It's good if the dean of the faculty and the ministry are giving up on their plan. But now he's under heavy attack today, the day before, from everybody on the left because he's spreading fake news. He lied. People from the left are expressing outrage that Kocarev made this false claim about the faculty, which, if it doesn't happen, it's because, they planned it. But just like with Mijalkov, he fled, but then had to return after the public reacted. Right. In this case, they tried, but couldn't do it. And but they're using this to smear the guy, completely in this good old communist fashion. With orchestrated media attack from everybody.
Right. Well, and again, you mentioned that this is orchestrated by the left, and the left there, the left here, the left everywhere, that doesn't believe in history, tradition, the past. Progress is unidirectional, and so you have to shed the history, you have to shed tradition, you have to shed the past, which we've talked about endless times on this podcast and written about, etc., which they see no benefit from the past. Which is not true at all. So you have to have roots, you have to have history, you have to have memory. But they're happy to discard it. Anyway, that's another battle. Now Kocarev also said that the two agreements with Greece and Bulgaria, the so-called Prespa agreement and the so-called treaty on neighborliness and friendliness and peace and love and light eternal
Cleanliness.
with Bulgaria. He said that both of these so-called treaties should be re-examined, looked at. They both, to his point, correctly, there's inherent contradictions in both of them between, on bilateral basis between Macedonia and Greece and Bulgaria. And then, of course, when you throw all three in the mix, as we've seen, Bulgaria, for instance, objecting to the name North Macedonia after it was agreed by everybody. So he said that those should be looked at. Is there going to be any, committee set up in MANU to look at those? Do we know that even?
I'm pretty sure he will do this. I mean, that's what they should be doing. This is a given. It's actually, as I said before, people used to mock them for not doing anything, not reacting to the treaties Zaev was signing with the neighbors. This is what they're set up for. This is what they should be doing. As they do, they will face even more pressure. I mean, Zaev insisted that they need to change the name, even after the bill was withdrawn in Parliament, and MANU refused to do it by itself. They said we're not going to change it through our own institutions. They'll be under increasing attack. And now Zaev was, of course, after saying this, he was pressured, okay, but you're the leader of the Social Democratic Alliance of Macedonia, still not North Macedonia. And he said, well, there are people, there are proposals. One of the proposals is that we change the name. He's actually agreeing that his party will change its name. But like MIA, they will try to preserve the abbreviation SDSM. So they'll try to replace Alliance, Soyuz in Macedonian, with Severna, with North. So they would be like the Social Democrats of North Macedonia. So they'll drop the Alliance, but they will remain SDSM, SDSM. That's their plan at the moment.
If he actually does that, and of course we on this podcast have been challenging him to do that, others have as well, so I'll give him credit if he actually does it, although the article I read this morning said that it was going to take a while. How long, who knows? But if that happens, then you can be damn sure he's going to try and get Vumero to change its name as well.
Well, Vumero is a historic abbreviation, then the latter part, they could just say it's Vumero. It's not, that means nothing.
Well,
I mean, that
the full name, Vumero Dopamine.
Well, actually, in both versions, the M is an adjective. It's not the name Macedonia.
Correct.
It's Makedonska. It's Macedonian, which, again, as we discussed, should be allowed. Government institutions should be renamed into North Macedonia, but especially, the second part of Vumero, they can say the first part is like a historic abbreviation, and the second part is it refers to Macedonian national unity. It's a Democratic Party of Macedonian national unity. And Zaev insisted that, especially, the word Macedonian will be allowed, will be in use for, both the nation and something that belongs to this nation. So, it's pretty open and
under that
case that it should remain.
Sorry to interrupt, but under that reading, then Macedonian Academy belongs to the nation.
Yeah.
So,
well, it is more like a governmental institution. The party, in theory, could win 0 seats. It could be like in parliament.
Well, again, as I keep saying, what has been done can be undone. What might be done will be undone, and all of these foolish and wrong moves by the current government of Zoran Zaev and Ali Ahmeti, got to throw him in there, will be undone at some point because they're wrong, simply. So,
we need to do away with the EU in some way. There was actually good enthusiasm when this proposal to join the European Economic Union, what's it called, like area or something, was broached, and people were actually very enthusiastic. Okay, now we joined NATO. Now we can join this EU light without any humiliation conditions from our neighbors, and then just begin working. Give up on the EU, joining the EU, full stop, and then start working on restoring our name. And, by the way, this would actually improve our relations with our neighbors, maybe not with Greece, because there are different, we have this history with them that I don't even think we can or should be friends or especially close to each other. But, it's really a travesty to have a fight with the Bulgarians. So people were actually saying, listen, if they stop, if we remove the object of blackmail, then, even Georgievsky was saying this, the way things are going with the Treaty of Friendliness and Cleanliness, we are actually going to have seriously devastated relations with Bulgaria, and that was not the objective of the treaty. And as MANU said, as Kocarev said, this is an unforeseen consequence of the treaties in how they interact with each other and what they're doing to our relations with our neighbors. So, they're really bad treaties, even, for the achievement of the stated goal of improving friendly ties with the neighbors. And on the other hand, there is the U.S. Embassy. The ambassador had an interview. We didn't discuss it last time. There was no time with Mijalkov. And she was asked, listen, a bunch of people are never going to accept this. It's becoming obvious. And it was one of the most, spineless journalists who was interviewing her. The fact that he even asked her this was a miracle. It was probably a arranged question, but the answer was not good. She said, but there are so many benefits of the treaty, with Greece, for example, and then she couldn't state any. She said, you joined NATO, but people, as you said in your column, people are not impressed with NATO membership on its face without the EU, and even if you had the EU, we saw the result of the referendum. And then she insisted, and then the treaty improved your relations in the sense that you have so much more new perspectives in cooperation with Greece. And she's talking about this gas pipeline the US is working on. But then we had, Greeks bought the oil refinery in Skopje, built the crude oil pipeline to the refinery from Solun to Skopje. They bought the biggest, second biggest bank in Macedonia, the biggest bread, bakery in Skopje, chain of bakeries, the biggest, marble quarry, the hundreds of companies in, especially in the southern cities, like textile, light industry. Greeks were fleeing, their oppressive economic regime and setting up in Macedonia the biggest tobacco factory in Strumica. There are dozens of major companies and hundreds of mid-sized and small companies that opened up without this humiliation of the treaty.
Exactly.
And she couldn't really, she couldn't even say what are the benefits of NATO for us. I'm not sure if she's in the clear what are the benefits of NATO for the US of adding Macedonia into NATO, but she couldn't really give a specific benefit of joining NATO for Macedonia. So, I don't know, it's really, they're still trying to put a brave face on this, but it's not really working.
Yeah, they of course they have to, because they did a foolish thing, they did a stupid thing. I think they recognize it. They don't know how to salvage, and of course their very power depends on this, and so and of course they feel threatened by it. Will, you referenced that in my latest column. I quoted a poll from the Market Agency, I think is the name of the group that did it. But we'll talk about that in the next podcast, because that was a good one, I think, showing how the majority of Macedonians see no benefit from NATO, would like to have the name returned, don't care if Macedonia gets kicked out of NATO, which it can't be kicked out of NATO. No country can be kicked out of NATO. If you think a country can be kicked out of NATO, I present to you Turkey, which is a NATO member and has been and will continue to be. So anyway, let's do this. It's been a while since we've had a farmer's pick, and I have a farmer's pick. And right now, Cvetin, I am looking at my computer screen, and Goce Delcev is turning his head.
Beaming at you.
He's smiling. His eyes are blinking.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
This is the most, it's both cool and disturbing. And if I scroll down, I can see also here, let me just push this button. And here's the Krste Misirkov is turning his head and blinking his eyes and looking about. It is bizarre. So this is, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. Mitko Veta, who is the assistant professor in medical image analysis at Eindhoven University of Technology, Macedonian, has obviously gone on to the website of MyHeritage, which is one of these, 23andMe and other groups. But this is an Israeli company, of course, that has figured out how to take still photos and literally make them come to life. It's not quite looking at Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One a few years ago when he had been dead for 20 years, but it's with enough money, obviously you could make any of these guys come back to life. So, but this is really, really cool. He's got a number of others up there, and we'll put links in it. And it's I posted it on Facebook. But to see these Macedonian heroes, literally moving, and you almost wonder what's going on in there. What are they thinking? Which is, of course, it's all fiction, but it's just fascinating, and as I said, somewhat disturbing at the same time. So we'll put links to those, and you can look at the other images that he puts up there and literally brings back to life.
We need to have a hologram of Goce. Do a talking to Zaev and Borisov together. Especially
don't think I haven't considered that. And other things. It's kind of like, well, we'll leave it at that. Movies that I still want to make about Macedonian history and Macedonian heroes. So, anyway, I'm going to have to finish up here. I actually have to, it's the beginning of my day, the end of your day. I've got to.
Oh, it's my day's just beginning.
Your day's okay. You're in a different shift. Yeah, well. I've got to get to work. So we will put this. This is episode 104 of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast up on our new platform, Substack, and we hope that people will subscribe. I'm starting to put my weekly columns there, the English version at least there. We'll see what else we can do as we turn this into a media empire. And as our friends, or at least my friends, I don't know if they're your friends, at the Dispatch say, what other products we can bring to subscribers. So we'll encourage everybody to check that out on Substack and subscribe so that you get the latest episodes of the podcast and my column to begin with and other things. Anything else for the good of the order?
Well, I think we got this covered. Bulgaria, EU, Americans, Zaev. Yeah, pretty much a wrap.
Excellent. Good.
Digital manipulation of of Macedonian history.
For the better.
Everything's there.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, we will talk to you again maybe on the weekend. We'll do another one. We'll see. Today's Tuesday, so just depends. There's always plenty of things to talk about.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.